Florida State survives the Gators in the swamp and caps off a perfect 12-0 season, the first for Florida State since 2014 and the first of Mike Norvell's career. There's a lot to unpack here. Game review, setting sights on Louisville next week, and the season overall. So let's dive into it. Now, I know it wasn't a perfect game on Saturday night, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and especially in that first quarter and a half, where it just kind of seemed like everything was going wrong for the Noles as they found themselves in a 12-point hole early on the road with a backup quarterback. There's quite a bit we could credit this to. Yes, Tate looked a bit rattled and really didn't play up to standards or even close to how I'd hoped he would play. But in that first quarter, I think the offense only ran 3 plays. So a lot of that was on their defense for not being able to get off the field. Now, I'll go ahead and say this. I know it's been said 1,000 times, but that unnecessary roughness call on Akeem Dent was just egregious. Just an absolutely horrible call there, and no surprise coming from Jeff Heeser, who I believe is the same ref that made that phantom call on Dalvin Cook against Clemson in 2016 that essentially cost Florida State the game. But yeah, there's no way that's a legit penalty there. It's just a textbook tackle and a terrible call that led to Florida getting a touchdown that they really shouldn't have gotten. The only touchdown of the night for the Gators, I might add. But yeah, it really wasn't until towards the end of that first half that Florida State got its first touchdown to make the score 7-12, cut that lead down a little bit. And then the Noles just really took over in that game in the second half. Florida State finishes the game on a 24-3 run, and you've seen that a lot from this team throughout the year where they kind of stall on offense, get down early, then defense holds strong, and then offense goes on a run to win out. You've seen it against LSU, Duke, Pitt, Clemson. The defense just keeps them in the game until the offense can hit their stride and go on a run, and that's a huge part of why they won this Florida game and why they're 12-0 on the season now. I found the stat someone posted on Twitter where it showed that Florida had negative 15 yards in that fourth quarter, no positive plays, and gave up 4 sacks. By the way, Jared Verse, Braden Fisk, Pat Payton, absolutely all went off, especially in that second half. But really, they were elite all game, so major props to those guys. Now, I talked about it earlier just a little bit, but the quarterback situation right now was interesting and a little concerning for the time being, at least. I expected Tate to run this offense a little better and look a little more composed since he's been here for 4 years now. Granted, he hasn't played a ton, and most of what he has played has been garbage time, but I still expected just a little more out of him. Now, given the circumstances, being thrust into the starting role after Jordan Travis goes down, pressure of an undefeated season on your shoulders, and your first true start is on the road against a rival in the weather, that's tough. He should still be expected to perform, but that's a lot to throw at a kid at one time, and that's why I'm not quite ready to move on from him just yet. I think the Florida game is a very small sample size, and in all honesty, I don't think Mike Norvell did him a ton of favors with the play calling. I want to see how he does against Louisville this weekend for the ACC Championship. Let's at least give him that and then see what he's made of. After another week of reps and chemistry with the starting team, that could go a long way for him. And he just got a good bit of experience playing in the swamp as well, so let's see if he can put it all together against Louisville, and then we can kind of go from there. I know since Jordan Travis went down, it's kind of felt like that killed the season, and granted, it was a devastating blow. We did a video on it last week, and it was super emotional, but I don't buy that this team isn't still capable of achieving their goals. Now, yes, it's less likely, and yes, it likely won't look as good as we've seen it look with Jordan Travis at quarterback, just because that's a special playmaker you no longer have. But for all the mistakes you saw from Tate and this team in the swamp on Saturday, they still went and covered the spread on the road against a rival. For context, Washington played Washington State, who was also 5-6. They only won by 3 with a last-second field goal. Georgia versus Georgia Tech. Georgia wins by 7, and Georgia Tech had life in that fourth quarter. So he really had the second most impressive win compared to anyone else in the top 5 other than Michigan, who of course beat Ohio State. You played the better team of those 3 and won by the biggest margin. And those teams all had their starting quarterbacks. Florida State is definitely 3 points better than Wazoo, or 7 points better than Georgia Tech. So don't tell me that Florida State can't still cause some chaos in the college football playoff. Especially when we've seen this before with Ohio State in 2014. I'm sure you guys have heard all about it when they won the national title that year with a third-string quarterback. I trust that this defense will keep you in games with anyone. The offense just has to be good enough at this point, and I think they can be. We'll learn a lot more from Louisville this weekend, though. If Florida State wins in Charlotte and improves to 13-0, they get in the playoffs for sure. What's good about that is that the team essentially then has a month of practice to get Tate settled in even more. So I think we'll be fine regardless, but I'll also ask you this. Florida State's 12-0. I believe that they're only the 6th team in program history to do that. 2 years ago, we went 5-7 and weren't even bowl eligible, with a horrible loss at home to Jacksonville State. Here we are 2 years later, undefeated regular season, going back to the first conference championship game in almost a decade, state champs back to back, a very likely shot at making the college football playoff. Even if we do draw Georgia in the first round and get blown out, are we all of a sudden too good for that? Of course not. Give me the playoffs all day long. I don't care what happens, just make it. The ratings, the recruiting boost, the extra games, give me all of that. I still think we could play very well in the playoffs too, but if the worst case is you lose in the first round, oh well. It's still a fantastic season, especially because you were only projected to win 10 games this year anyway. The program is still way ahead of schedule on the turnaround, and I think the success we have is very sustainable under Mike Norvell. From 5-7 to a playoff team in 2 years' time is incredible, and it's the very reason I'm not putting any limitations on this team at this point, or any limitations on what they can accomplish. But first, we got to beat Louisville and Charlotte, and then we'll know for sure who we're playing and where, and then we can just get back to work. I have some more stuff coming out this week, a few recruiting updates, and maybe previewing Louisville a little closer. But if you guys like the video and like talking Florida State football, be sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. We're super close to reaching 100 subscribers, only 7 away right now. It'd be super cool to hit that by Saturday, so definitely hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for more videos. As always, go Noles.